Hello, everybody, and welcome back to EdTech World. This is episode 4 with Thomas Sauer, our very special guest, and we're going to be talking generative AI in the world language classroom. My name is Meredith White, and Thomas, will you tell me who you are and what you're doing these days?
Sure. My name is Thomas Sauer, and I'm the director of Pearl, which is a language resource center at the University of Maryland.
Wahoo! So we've known each other. I was trying to think of this earlier today. Has it been math.
9 months.
9 years?
9 years.
2015? Yeah, isn't that crazy?
9 months. 9 months.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time. And it doesn't feel that long, but when I look at the different like phases and kind of locations, because you've moved since then, I've moved since then, and things have changed. It's been a really interesting almost 10 years. And so many, I know we're talking technology today in the world language classroom, and specifically, obviously, generative AI. But there have been also so many changes, not technology related, just so many changes. And I feel like we've been on like our own kind of journeys, but you've always played a role. So thank you for spending time with us today. I super appreciate it. Um, we had an episode 3 was on generative AI in general with Joe Dale, and like so many great tools, great conversation, lots of ideas. So let's start with kind of looking at that, but maybe kind of, I don't know, the caution tape around the whole topic. Is there, when it comes to generative AI, is there is there to be as much excitement as people have, or do you think there should be more kind of caution tape, or what should we be thinking about?
Well, I do think excitement is a good word. I don't think I've seen a tool in my almost 30 years now that has people that excited, right? There's always a new tool, people get excited, and that kind of goes away. I mean, I remember running my first Kahoot with a group of teachers, and people got so excited, and then, everybody played Kahoot for years and whatever it happens to be. Um, and there's always new tools, absolutely. But this time I think people are really, really excited about this one. And if you think about there's this great image of an implementation curve about when new technologies come around, it starts with those early adapters and then enthusiasts and eventually gets over the hump. I feel like this particular tool, innovation, whatever you want to call it, seems to be just moving faster than anything else. Um, but the resistance is there as well. So I remember, well, this goes way back. I used to have your tag, the EdTech I used to be the world language tech guy, right?
Right.
Because young kid and people would come to me and ask me for all the tools. And in the summer of 1998, I ran my very first professional development I've ever ran was on teaching teachers how to use PowerPoint and
As
Microsoft,
one does.
as one does, and Microsoft Publisher with their students. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've kind of been there along the way. And there was resistance then. Then I remember when YouTube came around, right? There was the enthusiasts, the people who loved it and immediately adapted it and brought it into their classrooms. And then there were those who resisted it. And they're like, YouTube is so bad and we can't do this. And then, of course, the districts all around the country blocked YouTube. And I kept telling them, don't worry about it. They'll unblock it eventually. Don't worry about it. They'll unblock it eventually. And people are like, no, they won't. It's terrible. And now I can't even go into a classroom without a teacher using some kind of YouTube video. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I wish you would stop using so many YouTube videos, right? And so I know there's always resistance when something new comes around, and eventually people catch up. People were upset when the typewriter came out. People were upset when the calculator came out.
Right.
And it's always the end of the demise of the teaching profession, the end of the demise of people being smart, the end of no more critical thinking. Like and somehow that doesn't work out ever. Somehow we all end up, I don't want to say falling in line, but we all figure out how to make the technology fit our pedagogical principles
Right.
and make sure that they actually support what we're trying to do. Now,
Yeah.
all that being said, I think this one might be just a little bit different
Hmm.
because it's more than just one tool, right? It's this time we're talking about a whole different approach to how information flows. It's a whole new approach how we access information. It's a whole new approach how we consume uh, and produce information. And so maybe our approach to it, our how we're using it is different too.
Yeah. Well, and you right away mentioning the speed is what makes me, um, kind of blows all of our hair back a little bit because, like you said, it's like one thing, it's like Kahoot, and then what was it like 7 years before another remotely competing kind of game kind of thing with buttons, and all of a sudden it's kind of a game show type thing. I mean, that was and can be still a really sexy addition to the classroom. But now I feel like in the last year, the second I've taken the dive into a new website or whatever it is, made an account, figured out what I can do for free, etc. There's like three more right behind it that do something really similar or say, "Oh, if you thought that was fun, try these other things." And then you're like, I need an account with those. And Joe Dale and I and Angela Burgess as well talked about Tiffany can touch on it a little bit, but mostly are those other two guests from episode 2 and 3. So this is easy now when we're in the single digits still. So thanks for being an early guest because like everything's fresh. But we talked a lot about privacy and all of those kind of things, which now in sort of the technology realm at my school is on is a daily part of my life. So I think you're exactly right. It's like the speed is going, wow, this is really cool. This could be exciting or scary, but also it's a different approach because now, like you said, I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, it's using multiple tools and we still have all those same security, privacy concerns, like also just whose work is it? If you're asking for AI to be, Chat GPT or whatever to be kind of a thought partner on something, well, whose original work is it now? If it's pulling from, the whole internet, plus then you tweaked it. So now it's like a little bit you, a little bit that. I don't know. Yeah, it's absolutely different, I would say, than anything we've seen.
But don't you think that a lot of the I think a lot of the conversations on privacy and security are just, for me, they're just a cover for not
Mm.
wanting to admit what they're really concerned about, and that is control, right?
Right.
Right
Mm.
now, in K-12 and even in higher ed, much of our school is still about control, right? Who
Yeah.
controls the learning? And that is the teacher, 100%,
Mm.
correct?
Yeah.
Teachers decide what they want to teach, how they want to teach it. And yes, I know there's curricular issues, but let's just pretend like for the most part, we can go into our classroom, we can shut the door, and no one will know actually what happens. But
Right.
we are hired because we're the content expert. And as language teachers, we're hired because we speak the language. We have the cultural knowledge. We know more than the kids.
Right.
And that's true for all subject areas. And so when districts are trying to come up with these policies, it's because they want to be able to continue to have the control of the content, the approaches to teaching. And I think what's happening is it's that's probably not, the control is slipping away. And
Mhm.
know that in at least in my future world of education, that's not what learning looks like, because that's a very outdated model. And so when we're trying to come up with these rules, then they're often trying to protect an old system as opposed to think about, okay, how can we use this tool to finally reinvent the system? Because that's what it's doing. Kevin Gawker from Marist College said that you know AI has been around for a long time. AI is not a new thing. It's just what ChatGPT and others have done. They have made it. I forgot what the right word was, but basically have made it what the browser did to the internet. Right? The internet existed for a long time, but none of us could use it until we had the browser. And then now
Right.
nobody says, well, let me open my browser. We just use it, or let me go to the internet. We just all do it, right? It's just become part of everything we're doing. And his prediction was that even in a year from now, nobody is going to be calling it AI, because it's just what we're
Mhm.
doing. And in the way we have already been the recipients of AI for a long time, right? All those little chatbots that have been on websites for longer than ChatGPT has been around, that may or may not have been annoying or may have been beneficial. It's already been there. So in a way, it's not new. It's just now we have found a way to make it accessible to anybody, which means now we feel like as teachers, oh, we should probably be using them too. And so that's where I want to put the caution flag up. Do you really need to use it? And so then what's your purpose for using it? Is it to make your daily tasks more efficient? Like, is it to make your planning easier? Is it to help you basically reduce your workload? Is it to personalize feedback for your students, which I think is still the number one role of a language teacher, is to give students
Mhm.
feedback? Is it to customize the content? Like, what's the real purpose that you want to use the AI?
Mhm.
Um, and that's when you have to, and then we can have different kind of conversations, right? But I think the first conversation you want to have is really, what does learning really mean? What does language learning really mean in 2024, 2025, or whenever we're talking about?
Mhm.
And then think about what role does AI have in that? Because the assumption is that we know what effective teaching looks is, and AI will make it easier. The assumption is that we know that if we all know what we're doing, and now with AI, we can do it faster, we can do it better, we can do it more efficient. What a great idea. But as somebody who works with lots of teachers and who's been in thousands of classrooms, I'll be the first one to tell you, we don't know what effective teaching looks like. We don't really know what effective language learning looks like. We all
Mhm.
just take our best guess at it. So when we're using any kind of AI tool, are we supporting perhaps practices that have been well regarded in the past?
Mhm.
It's a nice way of saying it. Um,
Right.
really aren't reflective of what learning looks like today. Because I think our kids just learn languages in such different ways
Mhm.
now than they did even even when we first met Meredith, and certainly different 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Absolutely. You've got me thinking too, which you did so early on in like us working together about like what kind of tasks are we using? Like you said, what does effective language learning look like, language teaching and learning look like for whom, in what ways, and all of those big questions that you always ask. And I'm realizing now, as you're saying that totally applies to this as well, because
Yeah.
if the task was, I don't want to use the word irrelevant because that's not what I mean. I mean it is, but that sounds really harsh. But if it could be more effective, if whatever, and I say that looking at you who has had very like, is that what you want to do? Is that the project that you want? And such honest feedback that for me was every time like a huge growth moment for me, going like, wow, no, yeah, that's probably not the best summative assessment, that's just labeling, you're right. And really like those powerful reflections. Now I'm thinking too of the role of generative AI, like if it wasn't maybe the most effective thing to be doing in the first place, just because now you can do it better and faster, and like it's, a little sexier, doesn't mean it's still what you should be doing. It just means you got there a little bit quicker, and I hadn't thought of it in that way. But
But
yeah.
I see a lot, that's what I see a lot of. I see a lot of teachers posting and being excited about that. Now they can create their grammar worksheet super fast. They can
Right.
create their translations, their questions. Like it's, oh, look how fast I can do these things now. It's like, well, congratulations. So now you are faster and more effective in your practice that's no longer regarded as relevant for today's
Right.
language, right? So
Right.
it's that's
Mm,
the hard part. And so then it's not an AI issue. It's
yeah.
it's the and that's the thing, right? It's always the question why. Why are you doing anything in your classroom? And
Mm,
if you don't have a good solid answer on this, then you probably won't be able to answer it for why you're using AI to support what you're doing in your classroom. And
mhm.
I have seen some highly effective teachers who don't who can
Mhm.
live fine without YouTube, without ever touching AI, and they're super effective, right? Because at the end of the day, language is the most human thing that we can do, and it doesn't require any kind of computer whatsoever.
Right.
Um, and that's not to be anti-AI or any kind of computer. It's just you can do it without. And so it's just my encouragement to teachers, before you use anything, just think about it.
Mhm.
And they are incredible. They're great tools. I mean, like I said, when I said about personalizing feedback, that's the job of a teacher. Students can get to language content outside of a class. They don't need us to give them the stuff because they can access YouTube just like we can.
Right. Right.
And AI will actually help them find the right things, probably even faster than we could. Um, so what is it that we can do then in the classroom? And that is to give the kids feedback. Tell them, okay, this is what you're doing well, and this is how you are leveling up. Now, if there's and most teachers, when we have these conversations, always tell me, Thomas, I can't do that. I have 189 students. I have 240 students. How do I give personalized feedback to 242 students? Well, that's where AI can come in and be super helpful.
Mm.
Right? Now, of course, always ask yourself again, what kind of feedback? Is the feedback too great to give an ABC, a 90 and
Right.
80%? Or is the feedback truly based on, okay, here is the performance level that you are performing at this level of proficiency, and this is the evidence from your text, from your speech, and these are the things that you might want to do in order to level up. That would take a teacher a long time to do for 242 students at the end of, I don't know, every unit, right? And
Mhm.
that's where tools can be super helpful to
Yeah.
do exactly that. So for that, I think it's fantastic.
Right. Well, and it's, yeah, for supporting the effective practices. I'm going to add the example you gave where, effective teachers can maybe be using none of it. Um, I think the opposite's probably also true. And I've been in those shoes where you're using all of the things and maybe not particularly effective.
For
So
sure.
it's like, like you said, it can go, I hadn't thought about that either. That it can go, somebody can appear to be really on the cutting edge in some ways, but there might not be a whole lot of teaching and learning going on. But it's just because we've decided, like you said, ooh, this new tool is so exciting. It can make my, comprehension questions that maybe aren't super effective questions, or, can be like we've all made like I used to be the queen of making a great hearing test. They weren't listening comprehension, they were just a hearing test, and kids would be like, great, heard it in Spanish, and it said, um su comida favorita es el pan, and all they had to find was like comida favorita pan, and they were like, oh, okay, that's it, and they could find the information that they needed and not really need to understand anything at all. So it was not a, listening comprehension, it was a hearing test. And I think the same thing is true with a lot of things of like, is this, do they need the language to do this? What in the language do they need to do this? What kind of feedback are they getting? Are they, what's the goal? Do they know how to go to the next step and all those kind of things? Is That's really important to think about. I had a friend recently when I said I love, um I'm a fan of paper and pencil writing in class. I've never really had students type responses. And that was all the rage about 10, 12 years ago. It was, the narrative, at least that I was hearing, was like, well, they need to get ready because in the future they're going to be typing, right? It's like that thing we do in fifth grade where they say, I don't know if they did this, like when you were growing up or by the time you got here too, in that kind of really formative period that you remember, but like fifth grade here, fourth grade was you need to be using cursive all the time because in fifth grade, you can't print and it's going to be all cursive. And then in fifth grade, they said, well, when you get to sixth grade, there's no pencils, it's all pen. So you need to, whatever. I don't think any of those things ever really came to fruition. But like you said, it was power and control. And it's like, you need to be doing this because they, whoever this like hypothetical they is going to be looking for this thing. And that's going to be super important. So I can remember 10, 12, 13 years ago, it being the whole thing, like typing. They're going to be typing all that. This is pre smartphones, like all of that. They're going to need to be, well, no, not pre, right about when smartphones were hitting the scene in a big way. And so it was like, they need to be typing. Well, we're on keyboards all the time now. We're on, typing, whatever. and we're still handwriting stuff, not as much stuff, but we're still handwriting stuff. And I remember the narrative, at least the school I was at the time, when we would do these projects and get to the computer lab and sit down or whatever, was, why aren't they typing this essay? I saw you writing in the classroom. They're going to be, and it was always kind of like a pro college, like exclusively college kind of thing. Um, and we know that not to be true. I mean, we know that that's not all they're going to be doing. They can still be slow, not very effective typers. Well, that's just kind of how they're typed. Like, but it was like getting them typing more is going to like help the thing. And I think of that when I think of my friend recently who said, "Wow, Meredith, you've really changed." And I said, I like in-person writing on paper because I do, because I like to see what they thought of in that moment. I like to give the feedback right there, like on the paper, that kind of thing. Do you see, I say all that to say, do you see any of that when you're working with people or when you're thinking about AI or when you're seeing people use it, that they're kind of maybe changing their practice unnecessarily, or they feel pressure to like be using all these tools? And do you think some of those authentic tasks and the things that we've known to work and to be effective, just good proven pedagogy, gets kind of lost in that because they feel like they need to be using some kind of tool that
Yeah.
hypothetically in the future, students will need, even though we can't really tell that.
I think it could be true, yeah. Uh, it's probably also because of, if you think about, AI, I mean, it's not this superpower that's all-knowing,
Mhm.
right? It's based on what we told them.
Right.
And so we have to always remember that. So what have we told them? And if the debate is still out what effective language learning still looks like,
Mhm.
no AI knows what that looks like unless we tell it to. And so if we keep telling all the tools to do ineffective practices, it's going to get really good at helping us implementing ineffective practices, right? Because
Wow.
it's just going to notice, well, I get input from all these teachers, and all they want to do is create this and this and this and this and this. So next person somebody asked, give me a lesson on this by default. That's going to give me, because there were 100,000 teachers who asked for something similarly bad before. And so you know, of course, the flip side is so true too. We can train it obviously to do it. So in my ideal world, what I would love to see, I would love to see AI to be able to use feedback to teachers. Wouldn't it be
Mhm.
great if you could just upload your lesson plan and say, hey, how good is this lesson plan? What am I missing? What can I do better? And then AI tells me, well, and here's why. Or what if you were able to upload whatever, a student, a video of yourself teaching, and I could give you feedback, which is the thing that you need too, right? The most as a teacher, you need more feedback on your practice because most principals can't give you any valid feedback on how to become a better language teacher. And so,
Mhm.
what if there was a tool that you can upload a video for self-teaching, and then they would be able to identify those practices that are highly effective versus those practices that you might want to reconsider?
Wow. I hadn't even thought about that. And now I'm realizing, yeah, what if you could upload a video of yourself teaching and not to be, I'm not like a, 90-10 person, even though, that, but even if you could just get like a raw idea of like, oh, you only said X amount, whether it's a percentage or like a word count or whatever, like you were only in the target language for this amount. Or I'm just thinking of all the feedback or
Only
all the things that
your
could even
students
just,
only spoke for 5 minutes
right,
in the entire class.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, like, and you only, yeah, that'd be super interesting.
But your students
Or
only use single words the entire class period.
literally, I was gonna say, or like where you as a teacher didn't level up and you could, because as you say, like intermediate's always the goal, right? So they have to have quality input. I would love to hear like some native speaker feedback of things that I've maybe either oversimplified and I don't need to, or like anglicized as well, because that's a thing. And also if I'm using, so maybe that's also like an anglicization anyway of, if I say like to make a decision in Spanish, even though the phrase is to take a decision in Spanish. So if I use the wrong verb, like to make, because I'm thinking in my English brain, I would love some feedback on like, hey, by the way, or like, how there's sometimes funny prepositions. Somebody would understand, But if you're looking to fine tune as a teacher and go, that's right, I really have to, or to take a decision, or to take what's the other one? I already said decision, but there's another one that like you take it, you don't make it, and in English you make it. So even just some language performance feedback, which may rub some people the wrong way, me saying that, but I think that would be cool. As a non-native speaker, I'd be super open to that. Or if I'm, like I said, if I'm oversimplifying and therefore making it not as high quality of a language, input to them, that'd be interesting feedback too.
And so that's where the technology enthusiast in me does get excited about
Yeah.
AI. I think we now have, in the past that would have required an incredible amount of coding, that an
Mm,
incredible money and time to be able to do that. And my guess is that we will probably have these tools in the very near future because people will figure this out, and because those are tools that actually can help us move teaching and learning forward as opposed to just simplifying or being more, being faster in it. It's great to simplify work. It's great to be being more efficient in our daily tasks, but let's also make sure that we're changing the way we're teaching, why we're teaching, like
mm,
like in our classes, because we already missed one big disruptor. We missed out on the biggest disruptor to education, right? 4 years
absolutely.
we had the chance of truly
A
the
lifetime.
and we went straight back, and not only did we miss it, we had even more rules and even more control when we went back,
Mhm.
and and I was surprised that our students are not responding whatsoever because we didn't train them in anything. They missed out on routines and procedures for multiple years, and now they're just acting up because
Yeah.
yeah. And so in our response to them acting up is let's make sure that it looks even more like prison than ever before. So we missed that opportunity. I hope that we don't miss the AI opportunity, not to figure out again how to make an outdated system more effective,
Mm,
to rethink what school looks like. Because,
mhm.
maybe we don't need Spanish class and math class and English class and science class. Maybe it's just a whole different idea of what school looks like because so many tasks can be automated and so many tasks our students have access to so many things that we are no longer in control of the information. Um,
Mhm.
we're not in control of information, and what are we in control of?
Right.
And I think those are the conversations that we should be having alongside with
Mm,
the AI conversation.
yeah.
Fortunately, what I'm seeing is there's more conversations about copyright and privacy and access.
Mhm.
All those conversations, they're just there to protect the old system. And I'm ready to blow up the system and start over.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's really interesting to think about too, because you're making me now think of like what is the, like you said, we created we're feeding it the information. So it is mind-boggling the information that it can access and the speed that it can access that with. But yeah, to what, like it's also still getting it from us. I'm thinking about our previous conversation about authentic resources too. As a non-native speaker, I might go, you know what? What's if I don't know 10 Colombian people, and maybe I only know two Colombian people. And as a Spanish teacher, that's one of the target cultures, and that's a history that I have not been to, a country that I have not been to yet, and history that I'm not, as familiar with. So now that could help fuel my learning. And that could help me say, you know what? I don't know 10 Colombian people. I know two. One is 80 and one might be 15. Um, but I'm going to ask AI, like, give me some Colombian radio stations. What are the top 5 listened to Colombian radio stations? Who are the top selling, like, 5 Colombian singers of all time or musical artists? Come on, Carlos Vives. My boyfriend, but he doesn't know it yet. So we're working on that. But, like, how could I compile information that I wouldn't have access to otherwise, like from people? Now I can find those people, maybe find those like social media accounts, use them as lessons. Do you feel like that's a good use of AI? Because I'm thinking of just again like information that might have been before restricted to communities, but now that like AI can compile so much quicker for us, if my own personal resources are limited, in terms of like authentic resources or just information about places and all the things that world language teachers have to teach, like history and culture and all those kind of things.
Well, it gets at the questions of prompts, right? What you just shared is you already had some prompts in mind. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing. People, then they used to people like, oh, I spend so much time on Google trying to find something,
Yeah.
um, Google rabbit hole. And it's like, well, that's not really Google's fault. That's because you don't know how to use Google. And
Okay.
you tons of tips on how to use Google better. But most people don't know those tips and they don't know how to use Google effectively. If we don't know how to use Google effectively, we don't know how to use AI effectively, right? And so that's the part that we've got to learn as teachers, but it's also the skill that we got to teach students, right? Um, because with the AI literally at their fingertips, if they knew how to ask for the right things, they can get the right things. For example, you know, it doesn't have to be me, the teacher, now designing all these feedback things. But what if my students are trained in asking for the correct feedback on their work AI? Then I'm out of that loop altogether, which is, and I'm okay with being out of loop. But that's not a skill that anybody is born with. Teachers aren't born with that skill because we didn't have to, and our students aren't born with that skill. So the idea of like prompting and searching and how do you
Mm-hmm.
find those things, those are the skills that we really got to be teaching. Now the question is that a job of a language teacher? I don't know.
Right. Right. Because like you said before with, like kind of that surface level use of technology. I mean, it's like going like, okay, I'm going to appeal to my kinesthetic learners. I'm going to make it a gallery walk. And now you've just taped a worksheet to a wall, and I've totally done that and been like, wait a minute, how is this kinesthetic again? Like it's not, but it makes you feel like it is, or at least they're up and around. And
But that's the thing, right?
it's the
The
same thing.
prompts, the prompts is the why. And
Hmm.
we struggle
Right,
in education defining the why. The
right.
answers are there. But if we don't ask, if we don't have the right why, we're not going to get the right answer. And so it's all in the prompt writing. And that's something I wish more of the AI workshops, more of the AI training, more of the AI webinars that are out there weren't focused necessarily on, oh, well, here's the coolest tool, because we already know there'll be a cooler tool next week. But it ought to be more training, more work on professional development, on prompt writing and how to, because that's going to be universal. It doesn't matter what the tool is, of how we're using those tools.
Yeah. Well, listen, we'll sign you noted. I hope you're available because I think, yeah, that would be really, again, just effective pedagogy, but now in like framed by what it is that we need to do, or like you said, how can we make something faster or more efficient, or all of those kind of things. That's super interesting. I hadn't even thought about that of, yeah, like crafting the prompt itself definitely
Skill.
takes some, yeah, it's a skill, right? And that's something I will say anytime I've worked on like curriculum, I think that's my weakness, or one, not my one of my many weaknesses is looking at that beyond. And it's something you're so good at, is like looking beyond and going like, is that the best thing though? What if we asked this, or what if the task was this? Do you think most people are self-conscious about that, like I am, like feel like kind of hopeless, like I feel like paralyzed with like, think I'm supposed to be better at this, or like make an authentic prompt or task, but like what do I say? Because maybe we've got like legacy teaching methods or training or
No, I
whatever.
think that's the handicap of AI for
Mm-hmm.
people who are struggling with AI, right? And people, you see all these people coming up with these beautiful images on, all these image generators. It's like, okay, yeah, but think about the creativity that went into writing the prompt to
Mm.
image, because whoever created that image in an AI system had a vision. They had a vision of what they wanted to see, because the more descriptive you're in your prompt, the more clearly you're able to articulate your vision, the better image you're going to get, right? It's not like these people just like gave it 5 words and they came up with the most perfect image. Because if you just give it a couple words, you're going to get a bunch of garbage out of those image generators. So that shows you that those people who are successful in it, they're already successful at it because they have a vision in mind, they have a purpose, they have their why, and they're able to articulate it, and then they get something, something out of the system back as a
Right.
result of that. And that's again, that's where the training needs to be able to articulate what good teaching looks like so that we can then generate the right kind of prompts to get the right materials back. But if we're not able to articulate effective teaching, that's going to be super difficult. And you and I both know that there's lots of teachers out there. But if you ask people, name me 5 teachers who you would want to go to a classroom to see, everybody
Mm,
goes, let me think about that for a while. And I think that's sad that we can't do that in our field, that we all can't just rattle off 100 teachers' names where we know they're amazing teachers. This is exactly what language teaching should look like. Until we solve that issue, AI is not going to help us.
right. Right. If people had, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I won't say what I think or what I think you'll say, but if somebody says, okay, where do I get started then? Like, I want to get better at that and therefore at AI, but also just using other tools. What are your immediate suggestions for practicing that or like sort of professional development on one's own or not on one's own for getting better at that? Like, I can't even articulate what it is that you always improve me on. It's like almost just it's like seeing the authentic, seeing the bigger thing at hand, not just
Yeah,
like
the
you said,
purpose.
like
Yeah.
writing like a grammar worksheet, but it's like, but why? But what's it for? What are they going to do with it that they can't do without it? Kind of a thing. If somebody said, okay, I want to get better and I want to spend some concerted time doing that, and I'm even willing to like pay some money, it'd be nice if they were free resources. What are your first things that come to mind?
I mean, obviously, the thing I've been working on for the last 15 years, which is the teacher effectiveness for language learning framework,
Woo.
um, the TEL framework, certainly kind of does give that vision for what that could look like. And I think it does help teachers asking a lot of why questions. But it can also be overwhelming, right? So a lot of people, they go there and they think it's like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to do these 200 things. And that's never been the goal of that project. But certainly that would be where I would start because they can then have those conversations. But I love the way you just had your own little inner monologue dialogue.
Mhm.
It'd be great if you could have that conversation with an AI bot.
Right. Right.
Like instead,
Absolutely. And then
like
I'd be like, here
be the
you
little
go.
Thomas bot instead of just, since I can't be everywhere, like, why? But why? But why?
That's right. You know what we need, okay, like, sorry, Siri, you're canceled. We need, hey, Thomas. And that's like just like a little bot that's like, are you sure? And then
But
you kind of
just
like
in
work
that
through it. Yeah.
conversation, they don't give you the answers. Even if I'm the
Right.
AI, I do not give you the
Exactly.
answer. I'm
Yeah.
just pushing you to think.
Ugh.
And I think that's the
Yeah.
thing, AI, right? It
Hmm.
looks like it's giving you the answers, but not really.
Hmm.
Still have whatever you're getting out of AI, it's usually you always have to edit it, right? You always have to be,
Yeah.
it's never perfect
Right.
because it's just, I mean, it's just giving you back what you already told it or what somebody else already told it.
Mhm.
And so, yeah.
I said, well, I figured you would say the Tell Project, but I didn't want to like seem like I was like leading into that. But yeah, absolutely. Like, and is it still, I know you have some changes coming up, so it's still tellproject.org, right? Will that change at all? Or can people
It's
just
changing it.
Google? Okay.
It's going to be it's on the Pearl website already.
Okay.
So everything is there. If you just go to the
Okay.
Pearl website which is Pearl, PEARLL dot
Mm.
nflc dot umd dot edu. And then click on teacher effectiveness. All the resources, old, new, are all there. Yeah.
Yay. Okay, good. And I also always spell Pearl. I always remember there's like two of one of the consonants, and then I end up putting like two of them. I'm like Pearrll, and then it comes up anyway, and I'm like, that's right, two L's, not
Language
two R's.
language learning, 2 L's.
I don't know. I always do that. Yeah, I think that's absolutely like, I guess I could see how it's funny. One man's trash is another man's treasure. When you first introduced me to it, I saw it as so exciting, and I was like, I couldn't, like, you couldn't hand me enough pages because they were all in color, like, put together, and I was like, this is so cool. But yeah, I could totally see how that would be overwhelming. And like you said, like these 200 things I'm supposed to get better at, but realizing that if it's proven pedagogy that is going to work, like you said earlier, with a lot of technology, without it, like however it's going to work, it will translate, pun not intended, into these other new tools. And maybe I also even help us be a little more discerning because I'm like you, I love a good technology tool, unless I don't. And then I'm like, next, I do that kind of Amy Poehler, like, good for her, not for me. She talks about in one of her books, like, kind of deciding, especially when we're comparing ourselves or when we think we should be using something, and you go, oh, Tom, yeah, it's like, why are we doing that to ourselves? When focusing just on being a better teacher, whatever that means for whatever stage we're in, and or whatever we want to improve, at different times, will also factor into trying those new tools and getting excited or not about other ones. Yeah, man, darn you in that prompting and that are you always it's so true, but you don't give the good answers because there aren't answers necessarily. It's
No,
like good teaching, good parenting, all of those. I shouldn't say the word good, but effective. My parents would do that a lot. It wasn't you should X and Y. It was, well, what do you think you should do? Well, what do you think's going to happen if you do that? And those are just good things to do in general. Any as we kind of wrap up here, you're busy and I don't want to take more of your time, but this has been so delightful. Is there anything that you feel like besides the gems you've already dropped? I feel like I'm always on a video. I feel like our relationship is like a video game, and you drop jewels and I pick them up and go, oh my god, so like you've already dropped all the jewels and the coins. Is there anything you think world language teachers are missing besides the things you've already mentioned? Or do you think when it comes to exploring tools or thinking about generative AI or just making sense of all of it or conceptualizing, like, is there something that you wish you could shout from the rooftops as like the most important thing or something to keep in mind when it comes to all of it?
I think it's okay. I think language teachers right now need to hear it's okay to not use AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And it's also okay to say, I'm not ready for it, right? Let me figure out all these other parts of my teaching before I go into that. Because I think because of the speed and because of the publicity,
mm-hmm.
because it's everywhere all around us, I'm worried that some teachers feeling pressured into using it. Um,
Absolutely.
I think it's okay if they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Let those tech enthusiasts figure out all the pitfalls and before,
Amen.
it's
Yeah.
okay not because anybody who will promise you that it will revolutionize teaching, I think they're overpromising, because we can revolutionize language teaching without AI, and then use AI to make it even better. But I'm not convinced yet that this tool is going to revolutionize that unless we revolutionize our approaches to language teaching.
Yeah, that's super true. And reminds me of, that thing of like the technology is supposed to work for us. We're not supposed to work for the technology kind of a thing. The tool is supposed to be it's supposed to be helpful, but it's like clothing, clothes are made like a certain size. They're supposed to fit you, not us fit them kind of a thing. If that makes sense. You get things tailored because of course clothes aren't just going to like fit off the rack, pretty much. So that makes a lot of sense. I agree. And there's so many ways we can improve without bringing technology into it besides all the platforms we're already using every day. Our media center specialist here at school is wonderful and has these like super great posters outside of each classroom and each office that say like so and so is reading, and then you've got a blank where you can like dry erase marker or put like a QR code or like a picture, whatever of what you're reading right now. And a couple of us were laughing that we're just going to put like the Outlook logo, like just Teams, and we're like, I I'm buried under reading emails, so sometimes I might actually still do that. But sometimes just the tools we're supposed to use for procedures can be overwhelming already. And then like I'm supposed to also be exploring, this other thing on top of it can definitely be overwhelming. So I really, really love that advice. And it goes on. Last episode we mentioned our to don't list. I love my to-do list, but also to don't, so you might AI, like you said, might be something that just kind of hangs out on the to don't list right now. And like you said, let everybody else, work it out.
Not going away. It's not going away, so it's okay.
Yeah, we've got plenty of time. Any last, besides those super wise words, any last parting thoughts or things to keep in mind?
No, just thanks for having this conversation. I think this is a
Yeah.
conversation we should probably have frequently because my mind is
Yes.
my guess is my answer will change
Yeah,
this week.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think should, right? Like both of ours, I know my stance on when I just look at technology in general, like you said before, like I used to be enthusiastic about different things to different levels. I used to be like cell phones in the classroom and that, it's exciting. They can do so much. And now I'm like, get it out, or like, look at the cool way they can buzz in the game. And now I'm like, never mind. So I think as we learn more and we know more, we change.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, yay. Thank you as always. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you on episode 5.